Oh, I love it when people say, I had a good month, on our income statement, we made lots of money. And then when I kind of say, well, but did you collect the cash from it? And then the truth kind of comes out. Welcome back to another episode of John the PM, where we believe that managing projects is not just a job, but a way of life. Today, I want to talk a little bit about that income statement. Some people call it P&L, profit and loss. The general gist of it is, and hopefully most people can understand this, is that it's representing a period of time. So the balance sheet was a snapshot of like at a moment in time, say the first of the year, 31st of December, something of that nature, while the income statement or profit and loss statement might be covering the entire year. Generally speaking, it's going to be organized by all your revenues that you brought in, less all your expenses that went out, and that's going to equal your profit. The higher the profit, the better off you are. Now, just to back up a little bit, most of the time, if you're in a big company, you're going to be using accrual accounting, and that's you really should be. Why? Because you need to be timing out the revenue in with the activity, that kind of occurs. That is a little bit more challenging, but it kind of gives a clear operating picture for the entity as far as what's happening. In a larger company, you're going to have specialists, you're going to have lots of people, and they do like only one thing. So if you're a cost accountant inside of a manufacturing facility, you're going to have that one person that's just going to be worried about work in progress, work in process, WIP, doing all the calculations thereof and kind of keeping up with how it's actually flowing through the systems. In a smaller business or in a personal finance, most of the time you're just going to be using cash accounting. In other words, as the cash hits the bank, you recognize it, and when you expense it out, write a check, and it actually leaves the bank, then those are your outflows, and that we call that cash accounting. There's nothing wrong with cash accounting. Back in if I had a druther, okay, I would always manage the cash and then let my accountants kind of figure out the accrual pieces. You will never be wrong if you just kind of like manage the cash. And if you're in a larger company, your accountants will be able to translate that back into accruals and things of that nature. Just make sure you understand what the impacts are and what the timings are. Otherwise, you will be surprised. Okay, I say that out of experience. I've been on kind of both sides of the coin, in that regards. So just kind of check in with them. Today, I'm kind of focusing in on the cash side. Why? Because I think that's highly important for project managers to really kind of understand, not just for their projects in of itself, but also for their life. So let's just kind of walk down the income statement. The first one's going to be revenue. Okay, that revenue can either come in slowly or fast. Congratulations on getting the big order. $10 million, $5 million, $1 million, 100,000, 10,000, 15,000. Congratulations on getting the order. But you have to have enough cash to come in to actually, be able to afford the contract. So you can have current asset, revenue, that's kind of coming in quickly. Well, think of this as retail sales. So as the retail comes in, the person goes to the cash register, they give you $1, you give them the good, you have an exchange, you have the cash right then and there. That is awesome. Good setup. Sometimes what you may have is 30, 60, 90-day payables, on that side. In other words, you say you're going to deliver the product, at the 1 February, but you might not get paid until 1 March. Okay. That's fine, too. Assuming that they actually pay on time, okay, and then two, that you can actually handle, that gap in there. Because remember, people still expect to be paid during those pieces, and rent still needs to be paid. So you have to have enough cash on hand, which is the balance sheet. That's what we're kind of talking about in earlier episodes, that you may want to take into consideration. Okay, so that's kind of being on the revenue side. Then on the expense side, kind of the same logic kind of applies. Some of the expenses are going to be fairly quick. You need something, gas for your car, as you're driving to client site, you put gas in, you pay $1, it's like right in there. The expenses like right there. On the other hand, you may make some orders but let's say that you make an order from a vendor, okay, and then the vendor sends you the product, in-house, and you have 30 days to pay. Now, during that time period, that 30 days, hopefully you've sold the material so that if you have the 30 days and you sold it on like day 5, then you only have 5 days that you have to worry about, as far as, trying to make sure you have enough cash to float those 5 days. In an ideal world, what you really want is to get the customer's cash and then expend it out later, on that side. And we would call that, kind of like a negative working capital, essentially. Some retailers, large box retailers, their systems are so fine tuned that when you go to the cash register and you swipe your card, debit card or something, they got the cash immediately, but they won't pay the vendors for 30, 60, 90 days. Okay. And while they have your cash, they're investing it. Okay. Again, big company. And they're making money off the spread before they actually have to pay the vendors. So that's just another technique or food for thought of how people, may be reacting. For the small business, that's always better, mainly because you know that you got paid. So those are your revenues. Those are your expenses. Revenues less expenses equals your profits. Again, if you kind of keep it on a cash basis, you can't hide. Okay. And it kind of takes into account the idea of uncollectibles and things of that nature. Sometimes if you're doing accrual accounting, you might have to have an account for doubtful accounts and things of that nature, but not so much on the cash side. All right. Hopefully you found some good value of that. There's probably a lot of questions. No issue. Just ask me. Kind of work through them. But if you just kind of manage the cash, 99% of the time you'll be okay. The whole idea is to kind of get your revenues in first and pay out later. But remember not to pay out in the sense that you are withholding funds from other people. Because remember, people have to still feed their babies and pay their house notes. So you don't want to do that. But you do want to make it so that it's fair and reasonable. Hopefully you found good value. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps us to be back of service to you. And may all of your projects be successful.